When I was growing up, I didn't have a typical childhood. For one thing, I never went outside and played in the dirt. At recess, when other kids would go play soccer, I literally took a book and read under a tree. I could hold intelligent conversations with adults long before I could socialize with people my own age. In short, I was never really a kid. I was just a mini adult. By the time I was 10, I was already volunteering in a science museum. That's not a very childlike pastime. But it was working in that museum that would later help me find my inner child, and from that, my passion. One summer, when I was 16, a few people from the paleontology department came in and asked for some extra hands just to help with sorting matrix. I had no idea what matrix was or what it meant to sort through it, but this one girl that I was working with just seemed really excited about it. So I thought, why not? Clearly there's something about dirt that's actually very interesting. Matrix is all of the dirt that's collected from around a fossil when it's being excavated in the field. And to sort matrix means to pick through it by hand to try to find any fossils or pieces of fossils that are too small to be seen with the naked eye, and so they were missed the first time around. So, for those of you that have never gotten the chance to find a fossil in a pile of dirt, let me tell you, it feels about like finding a $100 bill in a pile of dirt. It's something that most people won't see, but once you get to the hang of it, there's this telltale sort of shine that a fossil has because it's bone and not just dirt. And when you see that light glinting off of something back at you, you know that that is a piece from an animal that lived millions of years ago that has just been waiting around for you to find it. And there it is. So I'm sitting at a table in the basement of a museum, probably the last place I ever thought I'd be. I'm surrounded by lamps and magnifiers, and it's just me and that one very excited girl, who later became my best friend. And we're chatting and working and going through this matrix and finding bones, and I was having so much more fun than I ever thought I would. But before I knew it, we were finished with all the matrix that they had given us. But I wasn't finished yet. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to do more. This was the first really fun, exciting, and sort of cool thing that I'd ever really done. So we went down the hall to the paleo lab and asked them if they had any more for us to work on. Naturally, they did, because there is a never-ending supply of matrix. They just said that it had to be washed first. My reaction to that was probably about the same as yours. Why are we washing dirt? It's naturally dirty. When you wash matrix, what you're trying to do is break up any large clumps of dirt and wash away as much of it as possible so that there's less for you to go through and it doesn't take as long. This process is, you're supposed to be very careful, and it involves 2 large storage containers, some window screen, and a hose. But me and this girl turned it into a game. It became a game to see who could get wetter, who could be muddier, and who could look the silliest while doing it. It was the most fun I'd ever had playing around. So I quickly got the hang of it, and it became my favorite pastime. For the last 2 years, I have spent pretty much every free moment that I had in the paleo lab at the museum doing whatever fossil work I could literally get my hands on. About a year ago, I finally got the chance to move away from just washing and sorting through matrix and do some real fossil repair and preparation work. David Temple, the associate curator of paleontology for the paleo department, came in and asked, hey, would you be interested in cleaning off and then repairing this broken clavicle, which is a collarbone? Of course, I said yes. This was something new for me to do. I was starting to get a little tired with just the routine of looking through dirt all day. So he taught me how to use a tool called an air scribe, which is anyway, there we go. So it's this apparatus here. This is the tip of the stylus, and it vibrates back and forth. It's powered by the air compressor that we keep under the desk. When you touch the tip of a stylus to any mineral buildup on a fossil like caliche, it immediately flakes away, almost like magic. And so I spent about 2 weeks using that to get rid of all of the caliche that was on these clavicle bones. Caliche is a hardened calcium carbonate substance, almost like cement. It's probably the most annoying thing any paleontologist has ever had to deal with, but unfortunately the clavicle pieces were covered in it. So even though it took the better part of my winter break when I should have been out celebrating the holidays, I was working on these bones, it was worth it for me. Because as I was standing there working with the pen in my hand, I was watching the remains of this creature that was long extinct slowly emerge from what used to be a shapeless lump. It was a prehistoric art project, and like any artist, I was addicted. But even once I'd gotten all of the caliche off of these fossils, there was still plenty of work to be done. I had to glue the pieces back together, and you can see the results of my handiwork here. Now, I didn't know the first thing about what kind of glue you would use on fossils. I was just handed an adhesive called Vinac and told to use it. So I did. But at that point, I wanted to know more, because I have this unquenchable thirst for knowledge. So I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know what the heck Vinac was, how do you mix it, when do you use what concentration of it, what the heck is a consolidant, and basically everything there is to know about all the tools and chemicals that you use in fossil prep. This is a fossil jacket. It's how paleontologists safely transport fossils from the field to a prep lab to be worked on. But this one isn't just any fossil jacket, it's my fossil jacket. The museum's dig crew built it in Seymour, Texas, and it has the remains of a Dimetrodon, which was a pre-dinosaur reptile. I have spent the last 8 months applying all of the techniques that I learned about in my research to this jacket to try to remove the bones from it. Now, at this point, I've taken out about 3-gallon bags worth of matrix, which need to be washed down and sorted. That's familiar territory for me. But what I learned is that when you're going through a fossil jacket, there's all these smaller fossils that you don't expect to be there that you really have to be careful not to break. That's why this is the longest part of the process. You have to go slowly and use hand tools, much about like dental picks or toothbrushes even, because using anything more advanced than that or going too fast will just damage the fossils that you aren't expecting to find. So these are all the fossils I found that I wasn't expecting to find. As you can see, or probably not see, it's kind of hard to tell where the bone is and where the dirt is. That's because every one of them is covered in caliche and/or dirt. So the next step is to take the air scribe that I've become very familiar with and remove any caliche from it. Unfortunately for the dirt, we don't really have a very advanced method of removing that. We just use vinegar and enough Q-tips to build your own Dimetrodon. This is my favorite out of all of the fossils that I found in the jacket. These two here are spines from the back of a Dimetrodon that support a giant sail on its back, which was used for species identification and temperature regulation. They're not my favorites because they're the most easily recognizable of bones. They're actually my favorites because they're broken, which means I get to glue them back together. I'm probably the only person in this room that is really excited about getting to glue stuff back together. But this is the new step for me. This is where I get to go beyond just looking for fossils. This is where I get to start actually working to prepare them and get them ready for display. And it's what I learned the most about in my research, so it's what I feel I need to practice the most on. There are dozens of different types of adhesives used to repair fossils that have been broken. So many, in fact, that I could probably have a whole talk describing them, but I can break them down into 3 categories for you: consolidants, resins, and emulsions. Consolidants, as I finally learned, are just very thin, diluted adhesives which penetrate the bone to harden it from the inside out. So if you have a fossil that's been structurally compromised or is very fragile, you would want to use a consolidant before you try to mount it for display, otherwise it'll crumble. Resin adhesives are plastic substances, usually made from acrylic acid, which have then been dissolved in a solute, such as acetone. Ladies, that's what's in our nail polish. Emulsions are just resins which have then been suspended in water. So, because of the different chemical properties of each different type of adhesive, they have their time and place. These spines are pretty structurally sound, so consolidants are just unnecessary. But the surfaces of the breaks are pretty smooth. So if I just used a very thin, fluid adhesive, it would drip right off the sides before it even dried. So I would need to use a thicker, more viscous one. I'm going to use Vinac, which I have now learned what it is, and I'm going to mix it with acetone. Vinac comes in plastic beads, and because you mix it with the acetone yourself, it gives you a lot more control in the consistency, like if you baked a cake from scratch rather than buying it from the store. The more acetone you mix with Vinac, the thinner and less concentrated it becomes. So the less acetone you use, the thicker and more concentrated it would become, which is just what I need. Doing this project was probably the best thing that could have happened to me at this point. You can love something without knowing much about it, but the more you know about it, the more you find to love. I've always been what some would call an intellectual child, so of course the chemistry behind all this appeals to that side of me. But it's more than just that. Being able to work with fossils means I'm working with my hands for the first time in my life, and there's an element of artistry about it that appeals to the other side of me. When I work with fossils, it's something that makes me completely happy, and I've finally found something that I'm passionate about in life. Most kids do love dinosaurs and paleontology, usually around age 6. I was about 10 years too late jumping on that bandwagon, but now that I'm finally on it, I've found my passion in life, and all because I finally started playing in the dirt. Thank you.